What if the ultimate sign that your life is completely broken is that everything is working perfectly?
Oh, wow. That is a heavy thought.
Right. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are settling into this really warm, reflective space to unpack something incredibly profound, an exploration we're calling From This Week's Sermon by Our Pastor.
It is such a joy to share this quiet time with you. I mean, taking the time to pause and truly examine the architecture of our daily lives, it's a rare thing.
It really is.
And the premise you just opened with, that a perfectly functioning life might actually be masking a deep structural collapse, that is one of those concepts that forces you to completely reevaluate the metrics of a quote-unquote good life.
Yeah, I found myself thinking about that specific paradox all week. The mission of our deep dive today is to really get under the hood of that realization from the pastor's message because, well, we live in a culture that absolutely worships efficiency.
Oh, complete.
We wake up, the alarm goes off, the coffee maker is already brewing because, we set it on a timer the night before. We navigate traffic, manage complex workloads, handle finances, and we do it all with this astonishing level of competence.
We really do. The machinery of our modern existence is incredibly sophisticated.
But the haunting question the pastor posed was this: just because the machine is humming along, does that mean we are actually alive?
To understand the gravity of that question, I think we have to look at the psychology of human habit. The human brain is a remarkably efficient organ, right?
Right.
It consumes a massive amount of our body's energy. So to conserve power, it constantly seeks to turn repeated actions into automatic routines.
Which is brilliant for survival.
Neurologically, it's brilliant. It means you don't have to relearn how to drive a car or type on a keyboard every single morning. The brain builds a neurological superhighway for those tasks.
But spiritually...
Exactly. Spiritually, that same neurological brilliance can become a silent trap. As the pastor shared with us, our daily structures become so seamless that we inadvertently push the creator of the universe out of the category of essential and downgrade him to a mere option.
That is such a crucial distinction. We essentially build an airplane and put it on autopilot. I mean, think about how autopilot works in modern aviation.
Okay, yeah.
A pilot can take off, flip a switch, and the plane's computer will perfectly manage the altitude, the speed, the navigation for thousands of miles. The flight feels incredibly smooth.
Passengers are drinking coffee. Cabin is calm.
Exactly. But if a sudden violent storm hits or a mechanical failure occurs, that over-reliance on autopilot becomes deadly. A pilot who hasn't actively touched the controls in years, who has lost the tactile feel of the aircraft, might panic. They might not know how to fly the plane manually when it actually matters.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize what we're talking about. The smooth flight is the functioning life. The paint is fresh, the systems are running, and nothing is currently catching fire. Because there are no immediate crises, we become lulled into this false sense of sovereignty. We become what philosophers sometimes call functional deists.
Functional deists. Let's break that term down for a moment because it sounds a bit academic, but the reality of it is actually quite common.
Yeah, a traditional deist believes that God created the universe, wound it up like a giant grandfather clock, and then just walked away to let it tick on its own.
But most of us would never verbally confess that.
No, never. We say we believe in a personal, active, loving God. But a functional deist is someone who says they believe in that active watchmaker, yet they live their Monday through Saturday exactly like that isolated clock.
Just ticking along,
managing their own gears, totally independent of the one who made them. We don't loudly declare a rebellion against God. We just quietly optimize our life to a point where we no longer require his daily intervention.
Wow. Which brings us to a really fascinating historical and textual analysis. From the pastor's message, we looked closely at Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord.
Such a powerful verse.
It is. And in our modern context, bread is just a carbohydrate we buy in a plastic bag at the grocery store. But in the ancient Near East, bread was the absolute, non-negotiable baseline of biological survival, wasn't it?
Entirely. In an ancient agrarian society, your relationship with bread was literally a matter of life and death.
Because if the rain didn't fall,
the grain didn't grow and you starved. There was no global supply chain to save you. So when the text says, man shall not live on bread alone, it is addressing the deepest, most primal human anxiety, which is survival.
Right.
The profound argument being made here is that biological survival, just keeping the heart beating and the lungs pumping, is not the same thing as living. In the biblical framework, true human flourishing is found in a concept called coram Deo.
Coram Deo. That translates to living before the face of God, correct?
Yes. It means living your entire life, the mundane, the spectacular, the painful, and the joyful, with a conscious, reverent awareness that you are in the presence of the divine.
It's an intentional attachment.
A moment-by-moment attachment, yes. So if your life is sustained only by the bread of your own efforts, your meticulously balanced spreadsheets and your career milestones, you might be functioning, but you are not experiencing coram Deo.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy. Living this way is like a beautifully painted house where the foundation has completely rotted away.
Oh, that's striking.
Right. On the outside, it looks like a success. The lawn is mowed, the windows are clean, but spiritually, the center has already collapsed. When our pastor pointed out that if it works without God, it is already broken, this is the structural failure being highlighted. A life devoid of that daily, desperate dependence on the Creator is fundamentally hollow.
It is hollow because the human heart just wasn't designed to carry the weight of its own sovereignty. And what is so compelling about this is that we can't just write this off as a modern problem.
Right, it's not just our busy schedules.
No, it's an ancient pattern. It's easy to blame the smartphone or the endless notifications or the corporate grind for our distraction. But this exact psychological and spiritual mechanism was playing out thousands of years ago in a desert.
The wilderness pattern. It's perhaps the most enduring mirror for the human condition we have in historical literature.
It really is.
The story of the Israelites in the wilderness is so revealing because it perfectly captures our tendency to bounce between two extremes. On one hand, we have crisis faith, and on the other, ordinary independence.
That tension is so real.
I want to look at the mechanics of this. When the Israelites faced an immediate life-threatening crisis, like the Egyptian army bearing down on them at the Red Sea, their faith was loud. They cried out.
They were desperate.
And we do the exact same thing today. When the medical test results come back with bad news, or when the bank account hits zero, or a relationship fractures irreparably, we suddenly realize the airplane is in a nosedive.
And we frantically grab the controls.
Exactly. We pray, we fast, we open our Bibles, we seek God with an intensity born of pure terror.
Because the illusion of self-sufficiency has been shattered. The crisis forces us to acknowledge our inherent vulnerability.
But the moment the storm passes, the moment the Red Sea parts and we are walking on dry ground again, something shifts in our brains. The ordinary returns.
The routine.
Yeah, and in the ordinary times, we quietly turn the autopilot back on. Now, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second because I know you, listening with us, might be having this exact thought.
Okay, go for it.
Isn't it just natural human behavior to rely on our own experience for the mundane, everyday things? I mean, I don't need divine intervention to figure out the self-checkout machine at the grocery store. Well, most days I don't. Why is it so incredibly dangerous to just handle the ordinary on our own?
That is the pivotal question. The danger is not located in the act of buying groceries or tying your shoes. The danger is the slow, imperceptible calcification of the heart. Every time we navigate our day relying solely on our own intellect and strength, we are reinforcing a neural pathway that says, I have enough.
Oh, wow.
So when we confess dependence on God with our lips on Sunday morning, but our Monday through Saturday architecture is designed to function entirely without Him, we construct the ultimate illusion of faith.
Because a life that runs without God is a life that soon realizes it doesn't need God.
Precisely. And the Israelites in the wilderness demonstrated how lethal this illusion becomes. If we softly unpack the shocking reality of Numbers chapter 14, the psychological breakdown is staggering.
It really is.
They're facing the unknown, they are exhausted, and they finally utter an absolutely terrifying sentence. They say, let us appoint a leader and go back to Egypt.
Which, from a modern, rational perspective, sounds like absolute insanity. Egypt was brutal, generational slavery. They were making bricks in the mud under the whips of taskmasters. Why on earth would the human brain ever desire to return to that?
Because the human brain harbors a deep, almost pathological hatred of uncertainty. Egypt was slavery, yes, but it was predictable slavery.
Right. The certainty of bondage.
Exactly. In Egypt, you knew exactly what time you had to wake up, you knew exactly how many bricks you had to make, and you knew exactly what your ration of food would be. The parameters of life were set.
But the wilderness?
The wilderness, on the other hand, was an environment of radical daily vulnerability. You had to wake up every single morning and look to the sky, trusting that God would provide the manna for that specific day.
Yeah.
You couldn't store it up. You couldn't optimize it.
It required absolute terrifying trust.
Yes. So when they said, let's go back to Egypt, they weren't suddenly becoming atheists. They weren't denying that God existed. I mean, they had literally just watched him dismantle the most powerful empire on earth through the plagues.
So what were they doing?
They were making a calculated, devastating value judgment. They were declaring that they believed life without him might actually be better, that a predictable, manageable life of slavery was preferable to a wild, unpredictable life of freedom that required daily dependence on God.
They were choosing the functioning machine over Corandeo.
Exactly that. And we make that same choice every time we prioritize our comfortable, predictable routines over the vulnerable posture of asking God to direct our daily steps.
It is a tragically fragile place to stand when the real storms of life inevitably arrive. Yet, as the pastor shared with us, in that exact same wilderness, surrounded by that exact same attitude, one person lived entirely differently.
Joshua, and not the famous, victorious, be strong and courageous Joshua on the main stage that we usually think of.
Right. Our cultural memory usually skips straight to the end of his life, the man standing at the edge of the Jordan River.
But the fascinating part of human development, and particularly spiritual formation, is that it never happens on the brightly lit stage. We're talking about the unnoticed Joshua being formed in the secret places.
Let's deeply explore that scene in Exodus chapter 33. It paints a breathtaking contrast. Moses goes out to the tent of meeting, the pillar of cloud descends. It's this overwhelming, visible, terrifying manifestation of the divine presence.
And all the people stand at their tents and watch.
Right, they observe the divine from the comfort of their own predictable spaces. But verse 11 shifts the camera angle. It zooms in on one incredibly quiet detail. It reads, "But his young aide Joshua did not leave the tent."
Did not leave. That is not a throwaway phrase.
No.
In the original text, this implies far more than just lingering to clean up the tent after Moses left.
Yeah.
He clung so closely he was inseparable. For Joshua, God wasn't an option. God was the very source of his being. He knew that without God, he would simply collapse.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
By today's standards of productivity, Joshua doing absolutely nothing in that tent looks completely inefficient.
Oh, completely.
It feels like a waste of time with no visible results. He isn't networking. He isn't out mediating disputes or organizing logistics. In a world that demands a return on investment for every minute, sitting in silence feels like failure.
And that discomfort reveals how deeply we have internalized the metrics of the machine. What did I produce today? But God operates on an entirely inverted metric.
He does not evaluate us by our performance.
No, he measures us by where we are attached. He uses those who are nothing without him. This connects so beautifully to Psalm 27, verse 4, where David's one desire is to dwell in the house of the Lord.
Just proximity.
Just proximity. And of course, John chapter 15, verse 5, the vine and the branches.
Oh, apart from me, you can do nothing.
Exactly. If you look at a branch attached to a vine, it doesn't appear to be doing much. It's not stressed. It's not hustling. It is just resting in its connection to the source. But without that connection, the branch literally dies. God does not entrust his deepest purposes to those who can live perfectly well without him.
Wow. So practically speaking, how do we cultivate this attachment? As the pastor shared, it all comes down to our gaze.
Yes, God looks at our direction, not our results.
Explain the mechanics of that, because it's such a paradigm shift. We spend our entire lives staring at our results. Did I hit my quota? Did I check everything off my to-do list?
But the actual engine of change isn't the behavior, it's the attention. There is a profound spiritual truth here. We become what we behold.
Yes.
If we look at money, we become money-driven. If we look at people and their opinions, we become people-pleasers. But if we look at God, we begin to see as God sees.
And Joshua's life is the ultimate case study in this. If we look at Joshua chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, his life only had meaning within God's story."
Contrast that with the modern mindset.
Right, the modern mindset of, this is my life and God helps me. We cast God as the supporting actor. But Joshua's mindset was, this is God's story and I belong within it.
Even his name, Joshua, means the Lord is salvation.
The Lord is the answer. I love how enthusiastically our pastor broke down the chain reaction of this gaze. When your gaze changes, your interpretation changes.
Yes.
You stop seeing a setback as a failure, and you interpret it as an opportunity for dependence. And when your interpretation changes, your choices change. And that completely transforms your walk of faith.
It's a transformation that works from the inside out, moving you far away from that fragile autopilot functioning life and anchoring you in a deep, resilient trust.
It really is breathtaking. As we slowly gather our thoughts and recap the journey of this message, we've moved from the dangerous illusion of a self-sufficient, functioning life to the beautiful, radical dependence of sitting in the tent with God.
Which brings us to a place of necessary, rigorous self-examination. I'd ask you, the listener, to softly examine your own life right now. Are you living a life that runs without God? Or are you someone who cannot stand even for a moment without Him?
That is a question that strips away all the polish. I want to leave you with a final lingering thought inspired by the message. If we become what we behold, and if God forms us in the unnoticed spaces, what is the hidden tent in your busy modern life right now? Where is that quiet space where you can sit, entirely inefficient by the world's standards, and just practice the art of not leaving Him?
Finding that space is the beginning of true living. May we all have the courage to step into that quiet tent this week.
Yes. May we all find the grace to just sit, to linger, and to fix our gaze on the one who holds it all together. Thank you so deeply for carving out this time to reflect with us. Have a beautiful, deeply dependent week. We'll be right here continuing to explore, to question, and to grow.